Hello and welcome to another edition of the Manliness Venture. So I recently turned 30 and I just want to take a moment of silence before we start to mourn the loss of my youth. You will be missed. As you saw from the title, in this video I want to share the top 5 lessons I learned in my 20s. Now, no matter what stage of life you're in, I believe that these lessons will make a difference in your life because they're pretty much eternal truths and they're taken from various different people. And so no matter where you are, no matter how old you are, keep on watching and learn something new or be reminded of something that you've forgotten. In any case, these 5 lessons will encourage you to be a better man. So here we go. We're gonna start strong with number 5. Porn will subdue you. So porn and masturbation addiction was something that I personally struggled with from my teens up to about when I was 21. And it's a topic that's come up in conversation recently due to, people saying that the government should ban it. So I've read many articles and heard many sermons on the subject, and I'll put a link to some of the best one of those below. It's a known fact that porn decreases your drive and has an insane potential for ruining your relationships and even potentially your life. There are many ways that I came to this conclusion, but one of the main ones was the book 1984. Now, this is a must-read book. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest that you do, and I'll have a link below. This is a weird lesson to get from this book. There's obviously many lessons that you can get from this book. This is a society where the government has taken over everything. They control speech, they rewrite history, they control completely the education of the children. Even the parents are slave to the children in a way that is absolutely insane. I highly recommend that you go read that. But the main character in this book realizes that this dystopian society is wrong, that the government should not have that much power, and that something needs to be done to free the people from the injustices of the government. But he also realizes that the only way to actually do that is if the people, or what they call in the book, the proles, revolt against the government as well. However, he is told by one of the people that is in the ruling class that the proles would never rebel. And why would that be? Why would the proles never rebel? Well, the government gives them just barely more than they need to be comfortable at survival. They still sometimes go hungry. There's still supposedly a war going on, so that keeps them afraid. But one of the main ways that the government controls these people is by providing them with porn. The proles are the only class that can have access to porn. And why is that? Well, it's because it fulfills a desire for unlimited sexuality, and it absolutely numbs them. This access to porn pacifies them and keeps them focused on chasing a high rather than chasing achievement or bettering their lives. There's no class movement in this society, and because they are distracted with porn and drink and prostitutes or whatever and barely surviving, they don't think about improving their lives. So if that's something that you need help with, there's also going to be a bunch of links down below to articles like I said before, and some of them will be about helping you get out of that. All right, lesson number 4, budget and save yourself. So this is a lesson that I learned right after I got married. Before I got married, I basically just didn't want to spend my money on anything, which is not really a sustainable way to go about life. So after I got married, my wife and I took this class and I read this book by Dave Ramsey. It's called The Total Money Makeover. Now this book taught me an insane amount about personal finances, which is the second most important topic that schools never touch on. Since taking this class and reading this book, we have been budgeting, mainly used this website called mint.com, and it has really helped us to see and decide where our money was gonna go. Now, most people think of budgeting as kind of a constraint, but that's actually not true. When you budget your money, you're basically deciding before you spend it where you wanna spend it. So you're deciding what's important to you and where your money is gonna go. And it actually frees you to do the things you wanna do and buy the things that you wanna buy. It puts you in control of your money. Now, I believe that everybody can get better at their personal finance. And if you want to improve and you haven't read this book, I suggest that you get it. And you can go through the link down below and then start tracking where your money is going. Start tracking your finances. See where you're spending. Read the book and take this new knowledge that you have, apply it, and see how much better your finances are going to be. Lesson number 3, readers are leaders, which is a really corny phrase and it's probably really overused, but it's true and it's a really good summary of this lesson. So this is a lesson that I learned while listening to this book. Theodore Rex, which is one of a 3-part series on Theodore Roosevelt. Now, Theodore Roosevelt was an absolutely incredible man. He was full of vigor and life, and he accomplished so much with his life. He was arguably one of the best presidents we've ever had. Now, this particular book is set in his president years, when, again, arguably, he was the most powerful man in the world. He was insanely popular among the people, and his intellect was something of an unstoppable force. Not only was his own personal library gigantic, he had his personal aides go get him herds of books. It is said that he read 1 book a day, even while still being president. Now, he read classics, philosophy, history about war, history of other countries, philosophy from other countries. He even read in other languages. All these books imparted knowledge and wisdom that shaped him to be one of the greatest men in Western civilization. And just look at that mustache. So after this video,
Go away! Read some books!
now, the second most important lesson I've learned in my 20s was that Jesus is for real. So I was raised in a church, but this didn't really hit home for me until I read this book by Josh McDowell called More Than a Carpenter. Now, Jesus is a pretty famous person, especially when you consider that he was an uneducated peasant from Israel, a region that was conquered by the Romans, and the fact that he lived about 2,000 years ago. So why is he so popular? Why is he so well known? Well, you can say that it's because he was the founder of Christianity. In this book, Josh McDowell discusses the idea that because Jesus said that he was God, there's only 3 options for what kind of person he was. He was either a liar, a lunatic, or he really was Lord. Those are the only 3 options. He can't just be a good teacher and then claim to be God. Some people may say, well, the writings that you have about Jesus aren't really accurate. Well, Josh McDowell goes through and explains how we got the Bible and why we can actually believe it, that there's way more evidence for the Bible being true than the campaigns of Caesar in England being true. This is an excellent book, and it's actually a very quick read. Everyone should read this book to at least have an educated opinion about this Israeli carpenter that is the most famous man in history. So now you must be confused. I mean, what could possibly top that? But here we go. Here's the most important lesson I learned in my 20s. Life is vanity, a vapor, passing, meaningless. Yep. Merry Christmas. So I learned this lesson reading Ecclesiastes, which is a book of the Bible, or the Tanakh, that comes right after Proverbs. And it was written by Solomon, arguably the wisest man that has ever lived. He wrote this book at the end of his life. After accomplishing everything that he accomplished and seeing everything that he saw and studying all the things that he studied, he comes to this conclusion: life is vanity. Life will fade. Things will pass away. Even things that we do are probably not going to be remembered. Isn't that a cheery way of looking at life? But honestly, it's a really good look at life. But that's not all that he says. Yes, he says that nothing in this world can satisfy our deepest desire. Not sex, not parties, not work, not relationships, not achievement. It's all in the end meaningless. So what are we to do? This is what he says: I perceive that there's nothing better for them to do, that is, people, than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. And then he ends the book with this: the end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. So nihilism or despair is not the answer. The answer is we were put on this rock for a reason, and while we are here, we might as well enjoy the things that we do. But we have to enjoy those things knowing that there's a life after this. And if we follow God, that is the absolute best way that we can live our lives. So in many ways, this lesson came before all the other ones. And if it wasn't for this lesson, I might not have learned the other ones. Man, I really wish I had all the other books that I told you about. But unfortunately, they're all in storage. But there you go. The top 5 lessons I learned in my 20s. Porn will subdue you. Budgeting will save you. Readers are leaders. Jesus is for real. And without God, life is meaningless. So take action. If you want to read any of the books that I mentioned, go through the links down below and start reading or listening. So before you go, drop me one of these, subscribe, and man up.